remember where you learned to drive?
Well, yes, on my father's farm. You know, I spent a lot of time as a child on the farm, and that's kind of where I got to, you know, my ambition was to drive tractors. You know, that's what I wanted to do, which is what I did. Yeah. And then at the age of 12, my mother's Morris Minor convertible had developed a problem, and it was no longer road drivable, so I managed to mend it, and I had it on the farm from the age of 12. So nice. It was a Morris Minor convertible that I decided to improve by taking as many bits of the body off as I could possibly, so I just cut all the wings, you know, it was down to its basic monocoque, which is the bit underneath, and I just used to drive that around for years and years and years.
And that's how the love started.
It was a fantastic, and that's, I'm afraid, where it began.
Lovely. Okay. Now, Chris, this is a big moment for you, isn't it? Because in your younger days, when you were supposed to be revising for your GCSEs, you was apparently reading Rowan's column here in a magazine about cars.
Well, he was the most famous comedian actor on British television, but actually he had a cameo writing for this magazine called Car, which was the Bible for people like me.
Nice.
So I'd sit there reading his words. You know, the guy that
inspired your career.
Blackadder was writing about his Aston Martins.
That's amazing.
And I remember the Mercedes 500e that used to put a paper clip in to get rid of the traction control.
That's right.
All these things.
Dear me, you remember more.
Yeah. It's not quite stalkerish, but when he said monocoque, he said monocoque, I did kind of shudder a bit.
On the edge.
Shudder a bit.
Let's talk about cars. The new series of Top Gear. You're racing lorries. They're a little chunky. You have an HGV licence,
Yes,
Rowan.
I do. Yeah,
I thought you were more of a classic
long time ago. Well, I've grown into classic cars, but I kind of went off cars for a period, and I was into trucks. And it sort of started. I used to do a sketch show called Not the 9 O'Clock News a long time ago, and we had a sketch called I Like Trucking, I think it was called. It was a song, and I thought for this, and I knew that we had this 8-wheel rigid to drive, and that's a kind of truck, by the way.
Thank you.
And I thought, you know what, I'd like to get my HGV driving test, so I did method, and I did HGV Class 2, which I got first time, and then I did HGV Class 1, which is the articulated, the bendy ones. But but some years ago, if I wanted to continue with my HGV, I don't know if it's called Class 1 or Class 2. They probably got some other names. It is still Class 1. In order to retain it, I would have to do a long and complicated medical, and I thought I can't be bothered to do that, so I'll kind of give it up. But even though I gave up the Class 1, I'm still licensed for, I think, buses and rigid trucks.
Well, they might need you this week.
I don't think you'll need it. I think you'll be all right.
No,
just in case.
Yeah, well, you know.
But Chris, you yourself, Paddy, and Freddie, you actually got your license last week,
and we did it the week of the storms. So I got blown onto the grass at 40 miles an hour, and really, I'm happy not to do it again. But racing trucks, now we're talking. They are steam-cooled, water-cooled brakes.
Oh yeah.
He's off.
You know, 1,000 horsepower, 8-speed gearbox, oversteer, sliding around.
This is a live show.
You can still slide them.
Steady yourself.
Proper out the side window job. Brilliant fun.
Oh, nice. Well, on this week's episode, the team find out if you can grab a reliable used car for less than 500 quid.
But I mean, what's kind of like your favourite moment that you've had with them, or even on this show?
In this series, we made an utterly puerile film about our ultimate imaginary cop character in a show that had a car in it. And those two clowns, I mean, they really, they just love... If they were at school and there was the dressing up box, they're in it straight away. They can't help themselves. So they turned up in these fantastic outfits with these florid names, and I just bought a jumper. That's all I had, because I couldn't really see the point. But they were, I think one of them was called Dirty Cobra, and the other one was called the Preston Ranger.
Of course.
But they are great fun to work with. I love them to bits. They're massive, and they take the mickey out of me, but I do love them.
It's a lovely dynamic.
Now, the show, I mean, we've seen the stunts and the fun, and you mentioned kind of the lorries and the drifting or whatever, but, you know, there is a serious side to the show as well. I know it's quite informative, you know, and especially kind of in, you know, today's age, and we're talking about kind of like motoring and the future of cars, electric cars and so on and so forth. There's a lot of that in the show, isn't there?
There's an episode, I think, next week, not this coming Sunday, but one after, where we look at the future motorised transport. I think it's a difficult balance. Top Gear is an entertainment show. We want to keep
Yeah.
people smiling. People need to
Yeah.
smile at the moment. Life's not so great. And I think if you just had an hour of me sitting there talking about differentials and whether we'll be using synthetic fuels in the future, Rowan might enjoy it. But
He's definitely watching it.
Yeah.
5 million people would switch off.
I'd be
So we've got to be... There is a balance.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, we have to stay entertaining, but also we've got to reflect the way people interact with their cars.
Correct.
And at the moment, it's not easy. You know, the cost of fuel has almost doubled in a couple of years. There's no other part of our lives where there's been such a profound change in cost.
Yeah.
Well, you and 5 million can watch Top Gear on Sunday evening at 8 o'clock on BBC One.
Aye, a very good interview. Round wet as usual and very knowledgeable about motors. Chris, not as funny, but very knowledgeable also. But his admiration of Rowan was obvious. His new series of Man VB is up to the very high standard of his work on Mr. Bean, not the 9 o'clock news and Blackadder. Although the current series of Top Gear is good with Chris, Buddy and Freddie, it pales into comparison to the work of Jeremy, Richard and James previously.